Thank you so much, Alfonso. Appreciate that. Um, well, hi everyone. Thank you for your time, and I just want to add my thank you to everyone who's organized this. If I started to list everyone's names, I wouldn't be able to to say everyone because there's so many people who are in the front and center, but also behind the scenes. So just thank you so much for taking this time, and thank you for all the other presenters as well, and thank you guys for being here. So today we're going to talk about communication, and I feel like this is obvious, but I want to say it right off the bat. This is not an exhaustive presentation. I feel the need to say that because communication is such a large topic. And it's funny because statistically, many of us assume that we're great communicators when we struggle with communication. So when we hear something about communication, we're like, oh yeah, I know someone who needs to hear that. But I invite you to listen to it for yourself, and then maybe share it with other people too. But to, as Alfonso said, come with an open mind. Because this is an essential part of being a software engineer, simply because software engineers work with other people. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but that's what we're going to talk about today. And I hope you are encouraged, but also empowered to go and continue to learn to be a better and better communicator. So first, we'll start with a little bit about myself. My name is Callie. It's like California. No, I don't live there. I'm a wife to a wonderful man named David, and I'm a puppy mom, and that phrase still makes me cringe simply because I'm not an animal person at all. But my husband took the opportunity of a pandemic to convince me we need somebody else in our home. So we got a dog, and she's a spoiled brat, but I love her. Her name is Everest. Before I was in software engineering, I was a high school English teacher for about 7 years. I taught English as a second language, but also literature. So I love teaching and I love learning. Those are things that I love. And I also live in Nairobi, Kenya, which yes, is in East Africa. A couple other things about me are I'm a closet introvert. Now I say closet only because I'm not like ashamed of it and I don't hide it. It's more if people just don't see it right off the bat. Because I'm loud and I'm outgoing, which has nothing to do with introversion, but people think it does. But I'm very introverted in the ways that that's where I get my energy from, being by myself, but also I like doing everything by myself. I like studying by myself. I like reading in an empty room. I like being alone. I also come from a very passive aggressive background. And what I mean by that is my family communicates passive aggressively. So like if my mom needs something, she won't say she needs it. She waits till the opportunity passes and then says, man, I really wish someone in this house would help me. So that's that's the kind of background I have. And I also naturally take things very personally. So if someone says like, oh, your food is too salty, I'm like, so you think I'm a second-rate human being? Cool. And I'm also very defensive naturally. Maybe it comes from having 3 brothers and no sisters, so I always felt like I had to defend myself. But that's just how I am naturally. And I say those last 3 things to prove a point, and that is we can all grow as communicators. I'm not naturally someone who likes to talk to people. I'm not naturally someone who clearly communicates. And I'm not naturally someone who sees things realistically. Like everything is not about me. I shouldn't take everything personally. But I think that I've been able to grow a lot and I'm still definitely growing in this area. So whether you're one of those people who you're like, man, I'm like the best communicator ever, or you think that you're a terrible communicator, or you're somewhere in between, I want you to see that as just wherever you are as a starting place. And if I can make progress as a communicator, oh my days, anybody can make progress as a communicator. So keep that in mind as we talk today. Before we go a little bit further, I want to get our operational definitions out of the way. And that just means, what do we mean when we say communication? Communication and collaboration are buzzwords that people put on their resumes and on nice cover letters and in presentations like this to make you listen. But like, what are we talking about? So communication in our context right now is the effective and mutual exchange of information between one place, person, or group with another. So I want you to pay attention to a couple words here. Effective, meaning it works and it does what it's supposed to do. Mutual, meaning it's going both ways. And exchange also means it's going both ways. So communication is not a monologue or a soliloquy if you're into Shakespeare. It's not what this is. Communication is going back and forth. It does what it should, and it's a sharing. And this leads to collaboration, which is the action of working with someone to produce or create something. So again, going back to our context is software engineers, students. And when I say software engineers, I'm literally talking about everyone in launch school, right? Just claim it. You're a software engineer. So whether you're an RB100 or you have started a company that I don't even understand what you do, wherever you are, you're a software engineer in this context we're talking about here. And you work with people. In RB 101, you study with other people. When you're in the workforce, you have different projects you have to work. You have to work with superiors, with peers. You might manage people. But all of this is a working together to produce or create something. And that, like, I feel like we know this, but we might not always remember that. But like that requires good communication. Because if you're working with someone, you have to talk to them and do things with them, share Slack messages or emails or face-to-face or what have you. And so even if we're like, man, I don't care about communication, I want to collaborate better. Well, cool. Now you have to care about communication, because in order to collaborate well, you need to communicate well. Now, before we talk about just some attributes of that, in case you're unconvinced, you're like, yeah, cool presentation, I came to support because I'm a nice person, but I don't really care about communication. Here's some reasons why you should care about communication. So I'm gonna talk about some consequences of bad communication, and then we'll talk about some rewards of good communication. And I'll share some stories in here. So one a big consequence of bad communication is just misunderstandings and completely unnecessary conflict. So you're just not coming across the way you want, or you let your emotions get the better of you, and you like all you wanted to do was walk over to the printer, but now you're fighting with someone and it's passive aggression. You're like, this is not what I needed. So it's unnecessary, and it clutters your life, it clutters your mind, it clutters your emotional and mental health. And even if you're someone who's like, well, I don't care, people think about me, that's cool, I support that, I wish I was that way, but it still clutters your life, time or emotion wise. And so that's a consequence. Another consequence is you sometimes will start avoiding certain projects because of certain people. So you're working, I don't even know, you're working for Twitter, okay? You're working for Twitter, and there's a project you want to work on. You're like so hyped to work on it, and you like sign up, but then you find out who's in charge of the project. Like, oh man, I can't stand that person. I can never talk to them. Like, oh, they just get on my nerves. And so at this point, you are now limiting yourself career-wise because of communication. So that's how much it became important to you, because you just don't like, maybe you just don't like their communication style, or maybe you could get along with them if you knew how to communicate better, all these different things. The next consequence is you can start to misrepresent your ideas and what you really want. I'll share a story about this. So a few years ago, I was running some international service projects with this guy named Seb, good friend of mine. And I was kind of his superior, but like a half step up. So we worked together, but like if something bad happened, it was on me, not on him. And one time we needed something by a Friday. He did not deliver it by a Friday. So I looked really bad on Friday, and I was upset about that. But I didn't tell him. I was just like, whatever, like Seb messed up, it's fine. But it actually wasn't fine, and I was mad. So on Sunday, we had a call where we were working with other people. And if I remember what I said, I would repeat it to you. But I basically just made rude, sarcastic comments about Seb in front of him and in front of the other people we were working with. Completely unprofessional, super rude. That's how I felt. And so I completely misrepresented myself, though, because did I think Seb was actually a bad person? No. That was like the only time I can think of him ever doing that. He's extremely reliable. Something had come up that I found out about later, and I misrepresented myself. I misrepresented him. I misrepresented our organization. And it wasn't even, that's not what I wanted. Did I want to embarrass Seb? No, I was just spewing out of my frustration and embarrassment. So I wasn't even being who I felt like I should be. And that is a consequence of bad communication and not really paying attention to what you're doing. Another consequence in the realm of Capstone. So full disclaimer, I'm not in Capstone, nor have I done Capstone. I'm in LS216, in case you wanted to know that. But I talked to Chris Lee last week, so that's where all this information comes from. So I promise it comes from an authoritative place. It's just not me. So in Capstone, it's a very high stakes situation, right? You're literally like, you've done core, you've spent all this money, you're gonna owe launch school, this money, you're banking literally the future of your career on this project you're making with semi-strangers, at least at the beginning. And in those kinds of situations, we can think, well, I just, I'm coming across in this negative way, or I'm super violent with my communication, or I withdraw a lot just because it's just high stakes. Like it makes me do it. But let me ask you a question. So picture a water bottle, okay? Water bottle filled with water, and it's clear. So I'm holding it on the bottom, and it's completely clear. And I say, is this water bottle, does it have clean water in it? And you're like, yeah, sure, it looks like it. And then I shake it, and now it becomes dirty. The question is, did I make that water bottle dirty by shaking it? The answer is no, I did not. There was sediment, there was dirt at the bottom of the water bottle. You just couldn't see it. All Capstone and other high stake situations do is shake the bottle. That's it. So yeah, everyone can be nice and polite when there's no stakes. Everyone can be nice and polite to people they only talk to for 30 seconds. But when you are shaken by Capstone or other situations that force you to be in high stakes and close proximity communication with other people, it just shows you what's already inside of you. And you come to know, maybe if you didn't already know, which extreme do you go to? Are you more prone to over aggressive and violent communication, or are you prone to just complete withdrawing? And I want to harp on withdrawing for a second, because sometimes we think that's okay. It's like, well, I'm not like cussing anyone out, so obviously I'm a good communicator. No, because retreating also just completely withholding information. And it's when someone disagrees with you and you disagree back, but you're just like, yeah, okay, that's fine. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Like, okay, it's not fine, but you're saying it's fine, but like, it's not fine. And that's bad too, because then you have nothing even to work with. So both extremes are very bad. And especially, I mean, in the realm of Capstone and working on a project, because both of them don't help you towards your goal. So communication, oh wait, what did Chris say? He said after core, so like you finish core, you excelled, that's great. Communication is everything in Capstone. He actually spends like 70 to 80% of his time as he leads Capstone just on managing interpersonal communication. And it's not necessarily bad things, like people are like cussing each other out in Slack. Like, it's not like that. But it's like if there's 3 people in a group in Capstone and 2 of them are messaging him separately about the same thing. It's like, well, why didn't you guys communicate? I'm confused. So then it's just unnecessary work, and then it might lead to resentment later because Chris responded to one person faster. So now people think Chris likes them better than the other person. It's just nonsense. So the point is, bad communication can have a lot of consequences, but remember, it's not the fault of the high stakes situation or Capstone or whatever. It's just, it was already in there. And so we have to deal with that ahead of time. Okay, let's go to some rewards now. Some rewards of good communication are, you can be a person of your word. Something very specific about this that I strive to be is I strive to be a person that everybody knows if I have a problem with them, or I was offended by them or upset with them, whatever, they know that I'll tell them. So if they notice, man, Callie kind of seems off today, they can assume it's something that has nothing to do with them, because if I have a problem with them, I'm an adult and I will talk to them. And it also means that I'm a person of my word in that I communicate clearly. So if I say, hey, I'll get XYZ done by Thursday, yeah, I'll definitely get XYZ done by Thursday. People know as soon as Callie says it, it's as good as done. That's what I strive to be. And you can just become more trustworthy. You're more of a joy to work with. Another reward of good communication is kind of similar to what I just said, is you can work with more people on more projects. And so there might still be people, well, actually not even might, there will still be people in your company or on your team or whatever that are not your favorite people to be around. They work everywhere, even for the best companies in the world, they're everywhere. So there's always going to be people that you don't get along with maybe perfectly or naturally, but as a good communicator, you know how to walk into that situation, you know how to handle it, you know how to get work done, and you know how to be a clear and good communicator and nice, and you're not limited career-wise because you don't want to have a conversation with someone who's we have to work with. Another reward is you can serve others with true empathy and compassion. I am convinced that one of the greatest things we can do in life is to serve other people. And this might be in complete connection with our work, and it might just be separate from our work. But the idea still is that you can serve others with true empathy. True empathy is you understand what someone feels, and compassion is about relieving the suffering of other people. So a good communicator isn't just about talking, but it's about listening and absorbing and noticing and caring about other people. So people know that if they talk to you and they don't like how something's working, they know that you'll actually listen and help them through that situation, however you can, depending on the context. The last reward is just the inverse of what we talked about Capstone, and that is you have a thriving team. Can you imagine, like, the whole Capstone, all you have to do is work on a project and all you have to do is talk about technical things. You don't have to worry about interpersonal communication of, oh, I didn't like their idea, now I should send them like an apology Slack message because I was kind of rude. Like, you don't have to do any of that because you're an effective communicator, and all you get to do is make a cool project and then get a cool job. Sounds wonderful. All right, so those are some consequences and rewards. Some more details about a great communicator, a few more things I want to touch on here, and we'll unpack them here in a second. But first is they seek to understand before being understood. I straight up copied and pasted this from, was it Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Effective People, Highly Effective People. And I love it because it just has the precedence correct of when you're in a conversation, you're not trying to shove your meaning down someone's throat. You're not trying to be right. You're not trying to beat someone into submission of your own ideas. And you're also not just being completely quiet until they stop talking and then you can just talk. But your goal in that communication is, I want to understand. And then now I want to be able to share my understanding so we can come to a mutual agreement or just, share information. The next thing is you stay focused on your true goal. I'll talk about this a little bit more in 2 slides, but the main idea is we usually go into a conversation with a goal. So I'll use a non-technical example. My husband, David, his chore, and one of his chores in our home is he washes the dishes because I hate washing dishes. And so sometimes in a conversation, like, my goal is just to get David to wash the dishes because he forgot or something. So I'll be like, hey babe, can you wash the dishes? But he might say something that offends me. And now my goal has changed to, like, protect my ego. And he's like, well, you didn't do the laundry because that's my chore. And now it's like, okay, let's see who can come up with the longest list of things the other person didn't do. Okay, I thought my goal was just to get him to the dishes. What in the world? So a good communicator stays focused on their goal, even if they're tempted to be, like, offended or sidetracked, they stay focused. The next attribute here of a great communicator is they grow from feedback. And that implicitly implies they accept feedback even with a grain of salt or several shakers worth of salt sometimes, but they absorb feedback and then they grow from it. They're not just like, cool, yeah, you know what? That's true. You're right. That is true about me. And now I'll continue along my merry way. Like, they actually take it and they learn and they grow. The next is, we already touched on this, but they communicate clearly and with empathy. And the last is they can engage in rigorous debate without hard feelings. Now, this is especially important in the realm of Capstone, but also just in the realm of the workplace, because honestly, like, ideas that we have for companies or how to solve a problem, they are rarely the best idea on the first iteration. Like, as soon as it hits your consciousness, that idea is not perfect and it's probably not going to work, honestly. So you need to be able to go through rigorous debate without getting your feelings hurt. So if someone's like, oh, I don't think that'll work, you're not like, yeah, well, you won't work, I hate you. Like, instead you're like, okay, yeah, like, tell me about that. Yeah, maybe it will work. Can you explain to me a little better why I don't think it works? Because I really want to think through that. And that's just so much of a better interaction, because then you can actually have better ideas. So me talking about those things, you're like, cool, Callie, great presentation. Sounds pretty. I don't know how to do any of those things. It's cool. It takes practice. And first, I want to share 5 things that have helped me, because remember, I am not naturally a great communicator. I'm naturally a very bad communicator. The first thing is question and rewrite. Question and rewrite. I question myself. So when I have small reactions to things or big reactions to things, I question myself, okay, why am I feeling that way? What is that? what is that telling me? And it's usually a false narrative that's in my head, and then I rewrite the narrative. I'm going to share 3 stories about this because I think this is extremely important. The first is to pay attention to your small reactions, and I will use this presentation. So Liz asked me to present, I can't remember when it was now, about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, something like that. And I was like, yeah, of course. I love presenting. I was a teacher for 7 years. I love sharing information. I love talking about communication because I think it's so important and my life's been enriched. So I'm like, yeah, of course, no problem. And over the last week, Liz has offered to help me, just get my ideas together or look at my slides, things like that, like 4 or 5 times. And every single time, I didn't say like, no, but I was like, yeah, we'll see. But I was sidestepping her help every single time. And so that's a small reaction though, right? I'm not like, I hate Liz. I'm just like, yeah, I don't want Liz's help. But then I paused and I was like, okay, I started questioning myself. Why do I not want Liz's help? Is it because my presentation is completely done? No. Is it because I already know where I'm going? I just haven't had time to like put it together? No. Okay, so why do I want Liz's help? And really, it just comes down to my pride. I'm a teacher for 7 years. I've made so many presentations. I publicly speak. I shouldn't need help because if I need help, that means I'm not good at doing this. I shouldn't do it in the first place. So that's the narrative in my head, which is false. Also, for the record, Liz, I'm going to sell your services here because Liz helped me so much. She helped me so much organize my thoughts in this presentation. If you get any value from it, thank Liz because she helped me organize my thoughts. So that I just had to question. And if I hadn't questioned it, you'd probably be looking at a very slipshotty presentation right now because I would have avoided Liz until this morning. So question even your small reactions, like, why am I avoiding that? Another big reaction, smaller reaction. I don't know. We'll say a reaction. So maybe you guys were probably at Rodney Matambo's presentation earlier this week, or you know who Rodney is. And quick background, Rodney's one of my best friends. He was the bridesman in my wedding. So like literally he stood on my side in my bridal party. I love that guy. And I introduced Rodney to Launch School. And I've had a lot of conversations, that's the context, I'll put that aside for a second. I've had a lot of conversations with other students and, they've talked to me on Slack or just in study sessions and they just start to, for lack of a better term, despair of their speed at Launch School. Like, yeah, I'm not going fast enough and so goes faster. And I'm always just like, yeah, it really doesn't matter. Like, it's okay. Like it doesn't mean anything about you. We're just all on different paths. We have different commitment levels. Like it's fine. And I thought I believed that because I was passing everybody. No one was passing me. And then Rodney frickin' Matambo comes out of left field and finishes Launch School. And before I blinked, and I'm like, dude, I taught you RB 101. How are you finishing Launch School this fast? And I noticed and I'm like, I'm happy for him though. Like he's my guy. Like I love Rodney and I'm so happy for him and he deserves all these good things. But I noticed that he like messaged me on Slack for things. I'm like, I don't want to talk to Rodney. I'm mad at Rodney. I was like, why am I mad at Rodney? Because he went faster than me in Launch School? That's so stupid. And I just had to question myself. It's like, but why is that? And again, it's just my pride. There's no other reason. It's like, I want it to be better than Rodney, I guess. I like, it's okay if other people are going slow, but I can't go. I'm not even slow. I can't even go that pace. And again, it's just false narratives we've written in our heads. And so learn to question your small reactions or your big reactions. Don't just bury them and wait until your anger gives you courage to speak. Question yourself, try to rewrite the narratives, bring it back to reality, and that'll help a lot. The second thing that helps me is I observe. So in addition to observing myself, as I just talked about, so observe, my physiological reactions when I get embarrassed or upset, I feel heat coming up to my cheeks. So I observe myself to know when I need to relax. But I also observe good communicators. I'm very fortunate to be friends with a lot of them, related to a lot of them. And I honestly just watch them communicate, especially in high stakes situations. Because I'm like, dude, I have no idea oh, that's what you should say. Oh, that makes sense. And it's just how you learn, because not a lot of us don't have that in our homes, or growing up, we didn't get to see that to mimic it. So now we need to find it. The third thing I do is I ask, and specifically I ask for two things I don't like. I ask for feedback and I ask for help. Again, I don't like to ask for help because I don't know why. I just have pride, I guess. And the other is I ask for feedback because it helps me be more receptive to feedback when I ask for it versus if someone's just like, hey, can I give you feedback? I'm like, oh, that means you hate me. That means you think everything I do is terrible. Like, no. But when I ask for it of my own volition, it actually helps me accept it more. And that, I don't know why, it just works that way. The fourth thing is to listen. And honestly, we could make like a 4-part presentation just about listening styles and how to listen better. But the main thing here is when you listen, stop thinking about yourself. Stop thinking about what you're going to say as soon as the other person takes a breath. Stop thinking about why they're wrong or even why they're right. Just listen. Just absorb the information of what they're sharing. Go into absorb mode and then synthesize and then respond. Because I think we miss a lot of what people say, and we miss, even if we get the words, right, we don't get the meaning because we're zoned out. We're thinking about our own things. If you're me, you're making grocery lists or something, but just focus and listen. And that'll automatically help you become a better communicator because now you're more in tune with what the person is saying. And the fifth thing is learn. Absorb and consume copious amounts of resources. I have a slide at the end of this presentation of a few resources I love, but I'm going to mention one right now, and it's called Crucial Conversations. It's by 3 different people. I can't remember their names, but Crucial Conversations. Everyone in the human race should read this book. It's fantastic. So Crucial Conversation has helped me. It's like, man, oh, so good. I'm just going to ramble about it now. It's so good, but it basically teaches you to handle high stakes conversations. So when emotions are high or stakes are high, and just how to communicate. And there's so many examples, and honestly, you could just like drop out of this presentation right now, just go read that book and you'll be fine. So go read that book. Okay, a few more, just some 4 other principles of growth. Again, we've talked about these things, but all good things bear repeating. So the first principle of growth is actually growth. And that is just remember you can grow. I don't care how terrible of a communicator, or I don't care how fantastic of a communicator you are. You can grow. I can grow. And so remember that you don't have to stay where you are and you can change. The first step there is self-awareness, understanding who you are. And the first step in this is it requires honesty and it requires vulnerability, because sometimes we fill our minds with noise and we don't want to sit still because we don't want to sit in the quietness of our mind because we're scared of what we'll find there. But we need to learn to be still and to notice the things that other people may be indicating, or just our mind does see, like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, but let me not think about that. But like, no, think about that. Sit and think and journal or do something that helps you remember it, and be aware of the things that you're noticing. Because our mind, we can play tricks on ourselves. You know, there's a book called I Told Me So, which is another good book, and it's about self-deception. Because if we don't like something about ourselves, it's really easy just to pretend it's not there. And if we don't listen to feedback, it's even easier not to think it's not there. But we need to be aware of ourselves, because even if everyone around us tells us something, if we don't accept it and we don't see it as like, oh, that's true about me, like that's right, then we can't actually grow. So that's the first step to any kind of development. The second principle of growth is to be goal-minded. And again, this is just staying focused on your goal and not focused on protecting your ego or making sure you look like the smartest person in the room or making sure you look perfect. Because like, you're not perfect. You're also probably not the smartest person in the room. And like, that's okay. It's all right. We all have ways to grow. And so try to focus on the meaningful and the good goals and not just something that's connected to your ego. The third principle of growth is practice. And the reason there's a sunshine here is because if we want to do something well in the rain, it's good to be able to practice in the sunshine. So it's not a good idea to wait till capstone, wait till you're in the throes of a heated debate with a loved one, and then suddenly be like, I should probably grow as a communicator. Like if you have to wait that long, I guess better late than never, but it's best to wait, or not best to wait. It's best to do it beforehand. So it's good if you're worried about being a good communicator in Capstone, you should work on that now. If you're worried about some kind of upcoming conversation or interaction, it's just good to start right now, and it takes practice. I'm always working on something with my communication, and I always tell my husband what it is because he's the person I interact with the most, especially with COVID. And it's good to just have those goals. So for me right now, one of my goals is to speak with a kind tone to my husband. It's weird. I can use a nice tone with like everyone except for my husband. I don't know why that is. He's like a great person. I think it's because, he's the closest and he's the person I take the most for granted. So I'm like, whatever, he'll still love me even if I'm a jerk. But like, I shouldn't be a jerk just because he'll still love me. And so right now my goal is I'm focusing and I'm practicing on my tone. So sometimes I'll literally speak to him in a bad tone. And as soon as I'm done talking, I'm like, oh, babe, sorry, let me re-say that. And then I practice saying it in a better way. And because he knows I'm trying. He's like, yeah, that sounded a lot better. Go with the second one. So find those people and those circumstances, and those spaces that you can practice your communication, because then when it's high stakes, you already have experience on how to do it well. And I would say the launch school community is a great place to practice. It's a great place to learn to ask your questions wisely and to get feedback, and just to do things in a way that it's not high stakes quite yet. And we all care about each other, and I think it's a good community and it's a good safe place. The last principle is that of trust. Trust. So when you get into those high stakes situations, it's a lot easier to take something from someone when you already trust them. So I'll talk about Rodney again because he's not here. So Rodney's one of the few people who he can tell me, yeah, Callie, I don't think that'll work. And I won't be offended because I know Rodney cares about me. I know he thinks I'm smart. He thinks I'm capable. So I won't take it personally because we've had that rapport built. We have that trust there. So I can like pour out my heart about this like crazy idea when I do it. He's like, yeah, that's really cool, but it won't work for all these reasons. And I'd be like, okay, tell me more. Versus if a stranger's like, that won't work, I'm like, dude, you don't know me, stop talking. And that's, again, something I need to work on. But the point is that trust builds, how I say this. So communication builds trust, and then trust builds the platform for greater communication. So it's kind of cyclical in that way. And it allows you to be able to go to those places. You're like, oh, I don't know how to handle a situation. And trust helps you do that. But I'm not talking about building trust like a con artist. So don't be like smooth and charming just to get someone to trust you. Actually be trustworthy. You actually should be someone who cares about their best interest, and you do think they're capable, and all those good things. So don't be a con artist, just like actually be trustworthy. And this is especially, again, important in the realm of Capstone because, one of the things that comes up there, so I've been told, is there might be 2, 3, 7 different pathways you can take. Because it's not like somebody comes up with the idea of their project on day one and everyone's like, that sounds like a great idea. Let us continue down that pathway. It's more of like, I think this is an idea, or this is an idea, da, da, da. And so what if you come down to 2 different ideas and you're a 3-person team, and you really want to go one direction, the other person really wants to go another direction? There's no right or wrong there. Both of them are viable. It's not like one's a terrible and one's a maybe. They're both great options. And so that's the place where you need to be trustworthy, and you need to be able to trust your other people. Because if the other person's like, Callie, I really think this will work, I need to trust they're not just saying that because they think I'm stupid or because they actually came up with their idea and they want to take more credit. I want to be able to trust them. And that comes through communication that led up to that point. I want to talk about 2 more example scenarios here before we wind down this presentation. And that is one in pair programming. So let's say, I'll use Alfonso. Hi, Alfonso. So let's say Alfonso and I are pair programming together. I'm preparing for the RB109 assessment. He's already passed it. And I literally messaged him on Slack to become a better programmer and to be like, hey, I want to practice my coding. So we meet up, we use CoderPad and Zoom and all that stuff. And I finish a problem. I kind of stumbled through it, but like I knew what I was doing, but I just didn't like feel it, and I didn't solve it very well. And so at the end, I'm like, hey, Alfonso, what's your feedback? And then he proceeds to tell me that my PDAC was sloppy And it didn't really seem like I had a really good grasp of the Ruby syntax because I didn't know the difference between some key methods. And I had long spaces of silence. I wasn't really communicating very well. But he did think that I understood the problem well, and he did think it was good that I was able to solve it at the end in about 25 minutes. So my natural inclination is to translate that as Alfonso thinks I'm an idiot and he thinks I'll never amount to anything, especially a software engineer. That is my natural translation. I don't even have to try to make that happen. And I could be like, well, Alfonso, it's like early in the morning. I don't even know why you wanted to meet at this time. And besides, I mean, you got an A- on your test, like you told me. So I don't even know why. Okay. Whoa. Like that. And I know we'll say like, oh, I wouldn't do that at launch school because we're all nice. But like, those are still things that can come up in actually, by the way, I don't even know what Alfonso got in his test. So, but like, that's the stuff you can come up in your heart and in your mind, and you start being like, oh yeah, no, thanks for the feedback. Yeah, no, it's fine. And your head like, I'll never work with them again because they just critique me. But what did I do? Two things. One, I didn't stay focused on my goal. My goal is to become a better programmer, and irrelevant of what Alfonso has done, whatever, irrelevant of what time it was, that's not even relevant. Like, if I want to be a better if I want not a communicator, if I want to be a better programmer, I need to listen to what Alfonso said. Second of all, I asked him for his feedback. And so if I'm going to start taking things personally, like that's an issue with me, not with him. And so we need to also learn to take responsibility for things. And I'm like, oh, Alfonso made me mad. No, Alfonso didn't make you mad. You made you mad. And that's really humbling to say and to deal with. But we have to be aware of that. A second example is, let's say you're in a workplace and your boss had you and your 3-person team come up with a new direction for a project. I'm going to keep it real vague. And you prepared a 5-page single-spaced case for why you want to do what you want to do, and you presented it. You're a great public speaker, so it went great. Everyone clapped. It was fantastic. But then your peer in front of everyone was like, well, I really don't think that'll work because, and starts listing all these reasons. Now, is your goal in that situation to defend your honor, quote unquote, to defend your ego, or is it to do what's best for the company? Because like maybe it's not a good idea. And they weren't like, that person's stupid. They're like, I don't think that'll work. And these are some reasons. That's a reasonable way to communicate that. That's fine. And so after the meeting, you have some options. One, you can just give your coworker the cold shoulder and never ever brew their coffee ever again, and just tell other people how you think they don't have good ideas. You don't know why they should, and go off that way. Or you can approach them at their desk and be like, hey, I really appreciate you speaking up in the presentation today. Could you give me some more, could you like explain a little bit more the reasons why you didn't think that would work? Because I want to keep iterating over this just to see if it can work, if I can work through those things. Do you see how much more mature that is? And how much more solution focused? And notice I'm not saying this is easy, but it is quite simple. It's not easy because it's not naturally, we're people who are focused on protecting ourselves. And I get that, but we can all grow it and learn to shift that and stay on our focus and learn to check our ego at the door for the sake of our true goals that we have. So these are just a few reminders, and that is, so some key takeaways. That is, good communication makes everything better. It literally makes everything better. I know we kind of focus on the software engineering or the workforce way, but man, it'll make everything better. All of your relationships, everything. It's really important to know yourself and to be honest and with your self-awareness. It's important to be willing to grow and then to do what you can to make that happen. And also focus on what matters, meaning focus on the goals that you have and make sure, because if your goal is like, well, my goal is to protect my ego, I would just ask you to reconsider that, reevaluate, and see really what's important in the long range for what you want to do. This is my further resources slide. So this is the Crucial Conversations book. Like, I'm trying to think of something I can say to convince you to read this book. Like, even if you don't read books, like even if you're like, yeah, I'm more of a podcast person, like that's cool, but please, please, please read this book, please. The second book is Give and Take. I actually haven't read this, but Chris recommended it when we were talking last week. So I'm going to read it because Chris recommended it. So here you go. And the last two things here are links, which I'll share my slide deck. So if you guys want to look at it, you'll have access to these links. Listening styles is just a link to different kinds of listening styles. It's a really good way to and you can take tests. You can find all these throughout the internet anyways, but the idea is understanding your natural learning or listening style, knowing what other people need, because sometimes your natural listening style isn't what somebody needs. Like some people need complete silence when they're talking. Other people need lots of like, yeah, no, that makes sense. And people are different. And the last thing are just TED Talks and articles in this website that has a bunch of great stuff that Liz kindly shared with me. And this is just a great place to look at those. And also, if you just go to like the TED Talks website and just type in communication, you will find enough to fill the rest of your year probably. But just look at things that especially appeal to you. You're like, oh, I want to grow in that way, or I want to know more about that. Just follow your curiosity and just follow things that you know that you want to work on. All right, I've been talking for a very long time. I hope some of that was helpful. And this time, just want to open up for Q&A for sure, but also if there's just stories, brief stories that anyone wants to share of, this is a time I got a really big reward from good communication, or this was a really big consequence from bad communication, just because we can also share, we can always learn from each other's experiences. So Q&A and experiences at this time, please.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Callie. For Q&A, you guys can go ahead and drop those questions into that Q&A box at the bottom, or you can use the raise your hand feature and I'll turn on permission for you. All right, Kelly, you might want to read this one in the Q&A box too. So, great presentation, Callie. Like you, I'm introverted, and your presentation really resonated with me. At the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned that your natural inclination is to do many things alone, including studying. Question number 1, when preparing for assessments, roughly what percentage of time do you spend studying on your own, and what percentage do you spend studying with others and pair programming? Question number 2, do you generally study and pair program with the same people again and again, or do you seek out a wide variety of different people to study and pair program with?
Awesome, thank you. And for some reason, I actually can't see I can see the number, but I can't see the Q&A. So you reading them is very helpful. So the first question, yeah, what's the ratio? Good question. So I can't really answer that the way you asked, sorry, but I can say this is it just depends on what I'm focusing on at the time. So when I'm going through the curriculum, so let's say I'm going through RB 101, I do not study with anyone like at all, unless someone else needs help, or someone like asks me like, hey, will you help me go through this? Then I'll do it. But I don't initiate anything when I'm during the course. But when I'm preparing for an assessment, that is when I'm basically only pair programming. Mostly because, especially in the interview, I can't really study a lot for the interview in certain ways by myself, just because, it helps for other people to do it with me. And even for the written assessments, I want people to find the gaps in my knowledge, because I'm a very diligent studier, but I have lots of blind spots because I'm like, yeah, I know everything. And then people ask me a question. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that was on the study guide. So it just depends where I am. But yeah, so during the course, pretty much just by myself. And when I'm test prepping, I force myself to be on lots of calls with other people. As far as who I study with, because I like to study with the same people if I can, but that doesn't always work out just because I end up going faster or slower than other people. So then it doesn't always make sense. So then I'm forced to make new friends. But everyone at launch school is so nice, so it always works out fine. But yeah, I generally try to stay the same people just because you already have built that rapport, and then you already know that you can give very clear feedback and no feelings are hurt. And also sometimes you just sync up your schedules really well. But I do try to find a wide range in that I do like to study with people who are earlier in the curriculum than me, at the same exact spot as me, and also ahead of me, because I learn differently from all three different kinds of people. Yeah. So I'm not purposely like I can only be with my own, or like I have to be with new people. It's more circumstantial that kind of just makes it happen.
Awesome. And Rachel just followed up. That was helpful. Thank you. And we are cleared on the queue. Let's just wait and see if a couple more questions come in.
Okay, thanks.
All right, I think that we can go ahead and wrap things up for the day. Callie, did you have any closing remarks?
Just want to say thank you again, Liz and Alfonso, for this one, and for everyone else for all the others, and go forth and be great communicators. And thanks for your time.